Hey guys, Courtney here. Just wanted to jump in before I get to the content and let you guys know that I have a special webinar coming up on Saturday, November 5th, and it is about Mars reclaiming the warrior within. So, this one is going to be maybe a workshop webinar style type of thing. So, bring your charts ready. If you have questions, of course, come prepared with those. But we're going to be taking a deep dive into looking at Mars and how it will develop in our childhood, and basically how we can kind of take back where we may have been suppressed in some ways in regards to our autonomy, our will, our anger, our assertiveness, our ambition, our masculinity, our entrepreneurial self, our physical self. Those are all aspects of Mars that can be either underdeveloped or suppressed or really supported in our charts. And if you want to learn about the side of yourself and learn how to bring it into balance, then definitely check this one out. It's very near and dear to my heart, so I hope to see you there. The link for that is down below, and I hope you guys have a great day. Hey guys, this is Courtney from Willis Bloom, and today we're talking about blessings in your astrology chart from Jupiter and Venus, which are also known as the Benefics in traditional astrology. So, if you want to learn where you have the greatest luck in your life and why sometimes your luck could be maybe tinged with a little bit of bad luck or a little bit of guilt, then definitely stay tuned for this video. Okay, so what are benefics? These are the two most positive planets that can offer us support. So there is the opposite of this, which are the malefics, which are Mars and Saturn, and then the benefics, which are Jupiter and Venus. If you were born during the day, Jupiter is even stronger for you. And if you were born during the night, Venus is even stronger for you. So Jupiter, which is also known as Zeus, is going to give you wisdom from past lives. Transits with Jupiter tends to give you greater understanding of things, greater opportunities as well. So things opening up, doors opening up, abundance, luck, travel, exuberance, optimism, faith, angelic support, religious and spiritual abilities as well. And then Venus is a more relationship-oriented planet. So this will tend to give you that relationship support, the network, the harmony from loved ones. A lot of creativity as well, because Venus has a lot to do with the arts. And so often a lot of celebrities will have strong Venuses because they will be both artistic in nature and have support from the public. Venus will tend to bring you financial well-being if it's well aspected, as well as attractiveness and possibly good relationships with women or your mother. So let's talk about what makes a successful, functioning, strong, healthy Venus, which can produce very ripe fruit in your life and give you all those blessings that I just mentioned. And then we'll also talk about what will take away from your Venus, which will mean that the blessings that you get are going to either be lessened or they're going to be attached to certain issues in your life. So you get something, but maybe because you've had to sacrifice something else. So we're going to kind of see how these things are always very nuanced in our chart in astrology and what we should look for in order to understand if we have a very strong, healthy, functional Venus or a Venus that has some difficult challenges going on with it, which is we usually have some sort of mix of the two. So first, we want to look to the sign that Venus is in. So if Venus is, for example, in her home signs of Taurus or Libra, we know that she's going to be really strong. We want to look in the house that Venus is in to see which kind of blessings that you're going to get. And we want to also look at the aspects that other planets are having to it and the houses that are ruled by Venus, which are going to be the houses with Taurus and Libra on the cusp. So these particular houses where Venus is and the houses that she rules are going to show which areas of life you are going to tend to receive maybe more money or more harmonious relationship blessings, more ease and flow, things that you may take for granted because you might not always realize that things are a little bit easier there for you. So that's kind of how to tell which area of life is going to be given those blessings for you. And we're going to look at examples of that in a second. And in order to tell if your Venus is being strengthened or weakened, we want to look at the following things. So first of all, to look at its weaknesses, we're going to see if there are any difficult aspects to the malefic planets that I mentioned. Are there squares or oppositions or conjunctions with Mars or Saturn? And it doesn't even have to be a difficult aspect. It could even be any aspect at all to these planets that can provide a certain amount of challenge. However, the difficult aspects are going to be significantly worse. And I don't mean to say worse as in like, I hate to say that word, but they're going to be significantly more challenging and something that will be a lot more noticeable than having maybe some positive aspects like a sextile or a trine. However, the good news is that regardless of the aspect, it's actually going to help the malefic be less dangerous in your chart. So for example, let's say you have a really challenging Mars in your day chart. Venus making an aspect to it like a trine or a sextile or even an opposition can indicate that the worst possible scenario will not play out with you in that with that Mars. So maybe accidents happening or anything kind of treacherous where you have really big fights with people that end very, very terribly. Those kinds of things, while Venus and opposing Mars could signify, because Venus is around relationships and you might get fiery and things might go a little south in relationships, it's still not going to ever amount to the worst case scenario. It's not going to amount to you having no friends and to you kind of getting into a terrible accident, because Venus is ultimately a planet of blessing. It will help that malefic out to be a little bit less challenging in your life. So even though no one really wants aspects between a positive planet like Venus to a challenging planet, just because it doesn't help Venus out, ultimately it does help the challenging planet out. So in that way, it's a good thing. If you have Venus retrograde, this is particularly challenging, which I've noticed with my clients, which I do think this is something that gets better generally with time and with age. But Venus retrograde can be experienced like having to learn a lot more lessons around the topics where Venus is ruling, especially around relationships and money. I tend to see people maybe choosing kind of the wrong partner for them or having to learn a little bit about, where to put their investment of love and energy. Venus combusts the sun can also be a little bit challenging, as well as maybe Venus in the 12th house. If Venus is in fall or detriment, if it's in the sign of Virgo or Aries, it can also be a little bit more challenging. It will lessen its helpfulness. That's basically what I'm trying to say. So when Venus is not feeling very strong, when it's a little bit weak in some ways, like as if it were drinking for a while or hadn't slept really well the night before, it's going to be a little bit less strong, a little bit less functional. And so it will still give you blessings, but it may be a little bit of a muted version versus the fullest extent which you could get from a very, very strong Venus. When Venus is in difficult aspect to Chiron, which is a asteroid associated with pain and emotional discomfort stemming from childhood, which I've been seeing in a lot of these celebrity charts. I've been seeing Venus conjunct Chiron again and again and again. So there's this weird kind of association between money and being liked and also childhood wounding. And so I think that can come from being publicly criticized or feeling like people like you for the wrong reasons. I think it can be a number of things, but Venus and Chiron, especially in a difficult aspect like conjunction, opposition, squares, can make Venus a little bit more uncomfortable or a little bit less benefic in its essence. Venus also in a challenging aspect to Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto can create a mixed bag or a complicated relationship with your blessings. So for example, you may, as I mentioned, kind of attract what you think is idyllic love with Venus opposite Neptune, but it may turn out to be a little bit of a disillusionment when you see that the person isn't what you thought they were. Or maybe you have Venus opposite Pluto and you get a lot of money but it's at a cost that your parents get to control you. So there's something where you can get a blessing, but it may also be kind of wrapped up in a challenging circumstance as well. And you may have to overcome certain things or balance certain things in order to get the positive kind of version of this. Venus will be at its strongest when it's conjunct an angle or in an angular house. So on the ascendant, descendant, IC, or midheaven, you're going to have a very noticeable, helpful Venus, even if it has some challenges going on with it. I see a lot of celebrities with Venus on the ascendant or Venus on the midheaven, but especially on the ascendant. It's going to make people like you more. It's going to make you more attractive. You're going to attract money more. And that's just kind of how it is. And even if it's not on an angle per se, like if you have your ascendant at 26 degrees of Virgo and you have Venus at 26 degrees of Virgo, that would be on the angle. But if you have it in anywhere in the first house, 4th, 7th, or 10th house, anywhere in the angular houses, then it's going to be very beneficial for you in the end. It will also be beneficial in the house of her joy. So Venus really likes to be in the 5th house. It's a house related to romance, to creativity, and this is Venus's topics. So if it's in this house, she's going to be particularly pleased. She'll be very pleased in her home signs of Libra and Taurus, or in her exalted sign of Pisces. So she feels most confident and most comfortable in the energy of these love, relationship, and art-oriented houses. And she will be doing exceptionally well if she is making positive aspects to your sun, to moon, and especially to Jupiter. And so you'll really notice that you'll receive more blessings from her, especially if you have them in aspect to these planets, and even more so to Jupiter. So if you have a lot of negative stuff going on with Venus, but she's in a trine to Jupiter, you are still going to receive some pretty significant blessings as a result of that kind of relationship. So you'll really start to see these things play out and how all these things will kind of blend together to mean something. And you'll start to be able to weigh out what feels like a bigger deal than other things. So Venus and Jupiter being such positive planets in a positive aspect is usually going to be a much bigger deal than even Venus in its fall or something like that. Hard aspects with Jupiter, the sun, or the moon can create a mixed bag, and it will tend to skew positively, but it will still be a little bit challenging. So, for example, I see oftentimes with Venus square Jupiter that this person may never have trouble with money, but they may always feel like they are living paycheck to paycheck, but they're never in want, if that makes sense. They're living paycheck to paycheck because they tend to spend in excess, but they have a lot of blessings from their job or from their family to where they can always kind of get their needs met. And so even though they're spending in excess, they're always fine, but maybe they have trouble managing their excessive nature. And that takes some time for them to learn how to get a hold of that. Or let's say, for example, Venus opposite the moon. So this can in some ways be helpful because Venus is going to give the moon some blessings. That's going to make you maybe relationship oriented, be able to attract partners. But then opposite the moon can also indicate maybe you had trouble kind of really feeling like you received the love and affection that you wanted when you were a child. And so maybe the partners that you do attract will be people that are playing out similar patterns that you experienced in childhood. So definitely things to consider where it is, again, a mixed bag where you're really swinging between highs and lows, where you can achieve some great thing and have this amazing success, and then also feel quite low when the opposite sort of happens, or you feel like just life really shows you the alternate side of the coin. And we're going to see with Jupiter that the same kind of modifications are present. So we're going to go over Jupiter now, but it's going to be a little bit altered for the specifics of Jupiter as a planet, but these things will be repeated. So you'll tend to see kind of what makes a planet really strong and what will weaken a planet. So again, Jupiter, to see where you're going to get the benefits of Jupiter in your life. So where you're going to have more wisdom, more random opportunities come your way where people are going to look up to you and see you as some type of leader, or where you might be able to be a great teacher or even find a great teacher or mentor. Wherever you're going to get those blessings are going to be represented by the house that Jupiter is in, as well as the houses that Jupiter rules, which would be Sagittarius and Pisces. So if Sagittarius is on your midheaven, your career line, or your 10th house cusp, all those are synonyms, then you know that Jupiter is in charge of this. And let's say Jupiter also falls in Sagittarius in the 10th house. You're probably going to have a lot of luck and expansiveness within your career because Jupiter loves to be in the sign of Sagittarius and loves to be in the sign of Pisces. So if it's in one of those signs, you know it's doing really well. You also know it's doing well in that house. So like whatever house it is in is going to indicate where those blessings are, and the aspects are going to show you, you know, is it in a trine with Venus or is it in a square with Saturn? It's going to be a really different kind of experience. As I mentioned, the difficult aspects to the malefics, Mars and Saturn are always going to kind of bring the blessings down. They're always going to kind of crash the party a little bit, which is unfortunate. But again, Jupiter will help those malefics to be less challenging in your life. So there is some blessings always coming from this. Jupiter retrograde, Jupiter in its fall or detriment, so in the sign of Gemini, Virgo, or Capricorn, will also lessen its helpfulness. And again, when it's in a difficult aspect to Chiron, Neptune, Uranus, or Pluto, there's again this mixed bag happening. So, yes, I've noticed that with Jupiter and Chiron, I've seen some people with, you know, where they may be really great at being healers. You know, Jupiter tends to already be looked up to as kind of a wise leader, and then Chiron is a healer. So they might be incredible healers and people can look up to them, but then they could also attract people who maybe take a little bit more or like need more healing. And that can also kind of be a drain on their life. So you can see these things play out in a mixed bag type of way. Jupiter is strengthened when it's conjunct an angle or in the angular houses, the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th, or in the house of his joy, which is the 11th house, because Jupiter is a societal planet. So being in the 11th house of, you know, the community, society, what's best for all of us is very much in line with Jupiter's energy and, you know, motto or mojo. Again, it loves to be in the signs of Sagittarius and Pisces, and it is exalted in the sign of Cancer. So in any of these houses, Jupiter is going to be functioning at its highest. So let's say Jupiter is in the sign of Cancer, it's exalted, it's in the 10th house, it's direct, it's doing really well, and then it has a square to Saturn. So we know that the square to Saturn is going to be less challenging because Jupiter's already really strong. So it's kind of like if you have to work a 10-hour day and you slept 9 hours, you ate super well the night before, you have a positive outlook on life, and you're going to approach this really long day ahead of you, this really tiring task ahead of you with a sense of optimism and feeling like you can possibly get through it and learn something. Versus Jupiter in Capricorn, which it doesn't like to be in the 12th house, making a square to Saturn, you might notice that you get a little bit more depressed, that you struggle a little bit to keep up with Saturn's heaviness, that the task starts to weigh you down. So you can start to see how the combination of factors, all these little things, really are going to describe your experience with something. And just saying a Jupiter squaring Saturn is bad is not enough. You really have to look at all of the factors, and that's why there are astrologers, because AI can't really do that yet. Computers can't really do that yet. We have to weave the tapestry of the entire chart together to create a story and to create a nuanced approach to somebody's chart. Jupiter receiving positive aspects with the Sun, Moon, and Venus can help you receive a lot of blessings. I've seen some people achieve massive success because of positive aspects with Jupiter. And so this can be something that is very exciting to have in your chart, and you might not even realize how blessed you are. You might just feel like, oh, things just kind of work out for me and I'm optimistic. And it's like this cycle, I think, because you're optimistic because of this placement, but also things tend to work out for you anyway because of this placement. And so it feeds this inner dialogue of things just tend to work out for me. I don't have to worry that much, you know, and then they do. And then it reinforces it. So you can kind of see that in someone's chart versus someone with Saturn opposite the Sun or square the Sun. They might have the different dialogue going on of life is kind of hard. I feel like I have to work really hard and I have to come up against these certain blocks, and I'm feeling I have to work harder than other people, and there's a different storyline at play. Hard aspects from Venus, I wrote Jupiter, but hard aspects from Venus, Sun, and Moon, again, will create that mixed bag. So people who, we're going to look at this with Khloe Kardashian, can achieve massive success and fame, but then also have these kind of lows in their life where they feel like they got kind of built up, this maybe pie in the sky kind of image of their life or of a partner or of a career venture, and then things don't work out to that extent because Jupiter, while optimistic, can, in a hard aspect, be overly optimistic and lead to a little bit of disappointment. And so that's where it can kind of swing from these highs and lows where you're like, oh, I'm going to do all this amazing stuff and I can do it all and everything's going to be great. And then you have to really learn to work with this energy and adjust. And then once you've learned to work with it, you start to get more of the blessings because you start to not over anticipate, over exaggerate, overdo as much. And you're able to then channel the positive of Jupiter and not go into excess, which can lead to disappointments. Okay, so let's look at some people's charts. This one was really fascinating to me, and I just kind of intuitively had this urge to look at this, and I think it was a perfect example. So this is Frances Cobain, who is a daughter of Kurt Cobain. And if you don't know Kurt Cobain, definitely look up his music, but he's a musician. He died by suicide a long time ago. He kind of started the grunge movement. He's the singer in Nirvana. And he was extremely famous and extremely wealthy. And so he died, I think, before Frances was, like, even really got to know him or meet him fully. At least in an age where she was aware that he was who he was. So there's this kind of sadness that is around her father, right? She never really met him. She never really knew him. But yet she's such a part of his story and has received and inherited his story, his fame, not fame to the same extent, but she has inherited connections and things that she never would have had if she had not had him as a father, as well as a lot of money. So she receives around $100,000 a month. So I think she's worth over $1 million. And so she's getting a ton of money from, her father's estate. And she was saying in an article that she feels really bad about it. And for a while she was living in extreme excess because she had so much money. She almost didn't know what to do with it. And she had no money management skills. She's just a kid. She's getting $100,000 a month. What would you do, And on top of that, she was into, different kind of substances. So on top of this, she's already having maybe poor judgment at the time because of, the substance abuse. So we can see that she's getting a lot of money, but there's excess here. So there's a lot of money, excess. And then on top of that, it's linked to this kind of tragic suicide of her father. So it's a lot of pain there as well. Maybe kind of guilt, like she mentioned, and confusion about why she even gets this. Not this level of entitlement that can come with people who grow up around it, but more so that guilt and confusion about why me, I'm not even really connected to this person. And so we can see that she has these amazing blessings with all these little kind of tags on them. Like, you can have this blessing, but this is going to feel this way and you're going to have this experience. And it's not just going to be this purely good thing, which is very important to recognize with astrology. The bad is not all bad and the good is not all good. And that's usually how we see it in people's charts. So how is this reflected in the astrology? So let's first take a look at what is going on with her Venus. So her Venus is right on her ascendant, smack dab, both at 13 degrees and 50 something seconds. It's pretty much exactly on her ascendant. So we know that she's likely going to be attractive. She's likely going to benefit from being well liked in some capacity, famous in some capacity, financially well off in some capacity. She's going to have doors open for her. On top of this, her Venus is conjunct Jupiter. So as I mentioned, Jupiter and Venus together are just like the best planets that you can have. So wherever this is in your chart, you're going to see like you have so many opportunities here. This is where I do see people kind of taking for granted that things just open up for them and just plop in their lap and they can just ride the coattails of whatever that is to their desires. I've seen this with individuals who had this in the 10th house, or maybe it was the 11th house. I can't remember now. And their friends just kind of hooked them up with careers and places to live. And they always had their needs met. They never had to look. They never had to search. They never had to worry. And they would kind of tell their partner and their friends like, oh, like, let's just do it this way. Like, we don't have to worry. We don't have to look. And it's like, no, you don't have to, but we have to. Your birth chart indicates a different kind of opportunity. And maybe because if your partner's with them, that would extend to you, but it's not everyone's not given the same kind of blessing. So we can see this amount of money is entirely magnified because Jupiter is here, and Jupiter is again on her ascendant as well. So she's not only receiving wealth and attractiveness and connections, but it's that times 100, which is why she gets $100,000 a month. And we can see also, though, that Venus is in a sign that she doesn't like to be in. She's in detriment in the sign of Virgo. Virgo's usually quite meticulous and critical, and Venus wants to enjoy things and look at the art and enjoy the harmony and the blessings of things and not focus too much on what's going wrong and being perfect. And so we can see here that maybe her Venus is not just going to accept and enjoy the money coming to her without a little bit of something kind of to tinge it a little bit. That could be the case if she's looking at it with this kind of scrutinous eye of like, why do I get this? Being a little bit critical of herself in the process of receiving the money. On top of that, it's making a square to Mars in her 10th house. Mars, again, is a malefic. It's in a sign of Gemini, so it's already quite heady. So we got two kind of heady signs and interaction here, which is, again, I think kind of compounding maybe some anxiety. Especially Mars. If you haven't watched already my video on anxiety, it's going to come out soon, or I don't know in relation to this, but it's going to come out either before or after this soon. And it's going to help kind of give you an idea of what I mean by this. But Mars is very hyperactive, especially in the sign of Gemini. So these are kind of feeding into each other of like, okay, I'm going to worry about this. I'm going to have anxiety about this. And with Venus conjunct Jupiter, we can see that she's already having a lot. She may already be prone to going into excess. And then because it's squaring Mars, which is our planet of our willpower and our self-control, we can see that she's going to inherently lack self-discipline and maybe be impulsive as a result of having so much money. And so it's a square, which is indicating she's going to have to learn the process of having to become financially literate, knowing how to manage her money, who to trust with her money, that type of thing. Those issues are going to have to be things that she has to confront. Those are her issues in regards to this blessing. It's a challenge at the same time for her. Also, because Mars is linked to tragedy and linked to kind of violence, and in the way that Kurt died, it was quite, violent. We can see here how she gets the money, but it's as a result of having to go through this very public, kind of aggressive, violent, traumatic experience with Mars right on her midheaven there, involved within the midheaven is related to the public. So we can see that it's very much tinged with not only anxiety and impulsiveness, but also this kind of tragic undertone as well. On top of this, her Venus and Jupiter, which is quite neutral, are making a trine to Uranus and Neptune. So this is linking it to the state of confusion. I've just got this with Uranus right out of nowhere. This wasn't deserved. This was just given to me. This is so random. But it also it can bring that feeling of guilt with it. But it's not necessarily a negative thing to have this in a trine. I think it's also quite supportive, even though you might not understand it and it comes out of nowhere. I think ultimately there's a surrendering to it, an acceptance of it, and recognizing that it provides a great deal of freedom for you. Venus is strengthened, again, by being exactly on the ascendant, conjunct Jupiter. And Venus is the ruler of her 2nd and 9th house. So we can see that this is going to, not only Venus is about money, but it's especially going to be about money for her because it's the ruler of her 2nd house of finances. You can see Libra's on the 2nd house cusp. So again, this is kind of a triple indicator if you're going to have a lot of money. And then being the ruler of her 9th house is going to provide her a lot of opportunities. She could maybe travel all over the world, study whatever she wants, meet new people, open doors, have different kind of philosophies and about life because she has the time and the energy to think about those things because she's afforded afforded the opportunity. And then Jupiter is also going through all of those things, and it's ruling her 7th and 4th houses. So she's also getting blessings in regards to having relationships open up for her. So finding through her family in particular, because it's the ruler of her 4th house of family, she's going to find that she maybe meets a partner, or she maybe has a wealthy partner. Maybe she has like a lot of networking and friends and just, you know, kind of rich or important people that she meets as a result of who her father was and who her mother is. So we can see how she has this interesting blend of blessings going on here. Now let's look at Khloe Kardashian. So Khloe Kardashian also comes from a very wealthy family, very famous family, and she's had a lot of success, but she's also had a lot of ups and downs, especially with public criticism. She has gone through a lot in regards to her self-confidence and her body image, and has had to work really hard to prove herself. I think in many ways she's felt like an outcast in her family, like the different sister, the one that people claim is, you know, from a different father that looks different. And so she's had to kind of combat that and work really hard to feel like the public accept her. And we can see this not only with Uranus on her midheaven, giving her that feeling of being different, but also with Saturn and Mars, the two malefics, the two worst planets in her 10th house of the public. It's like they're just coming for her. And then also with her love life, she's had a lot of issues with that. And the public just has made it so much worse and has given her pretty tremendous anxiety. So let's take a look at why she might have such amazing opportunities and wealth and fame and success, but also these kind of tragic areas of her life where her husband or her partner had a baby with somebody else, you know, right when she's supposed to have a baby, and how people have made fun of her and mocked her online, and she's had to go through a lot to get to where she is today, to become mentally even stable. So her Venus is in the sign of Cancer, which is pretty good. I mean, it's a neutral thing. I think Venus enjoys being an emotional water sign. It's in the 6th house, which is okay too. It's not the best house, but it's not going to hurt it too much. Venus is the ruler of her 4th and 9th house. So we can see one of the biggest blessings in her life has been her family and her faith. So we can see here that these are the two things that have kept her going, that have given her the greatest, you know, amount of optimism, happiness, and again, success. However, Venus is also combusts her sun. So the light of the sun, I also did a video on this. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, definitely go and watch that one. The light of the sun is so bright that it's outshining Venus, and it is blinding her Venus, and it's making it disoriented, less functional, less healthy. So while she does have fame and success, in many ways she may feel eclipsed. In many ways she may feel blinded, especially within her partnerships, because the sun is the ruler of her partnerships. So there's something going on here with her Venus combusts the sun that can make her blind to her relationship issues. And then on top of that, her Venus is trining Mars and Saturn in the 10th house, which I mentioned is really in regards to the public attacking her, the public being cruel, being cold, being aggressive towards her. So even though this is a positive aspect, so the positive aspect can indicate that in many ways she still benefits financially and in relationships also probably from this placement. So she still benefits from the public going after her because her name is all over the news. She becomes even more relevant. She's still out there. She's still of importance. So there is a positive, you know, angle towards this, but it's extremely painful as well. And so we can see how these things are both at play in her life, and she may become kind of insecure as a result. Her Jupiter is retrograde in Capricorn. So it's retrograde, which is not very functional. It's in Capricorn, which is not a sign it likes to be in. It's in the 12th house, which is less functional because it's a house that is much more hidden from you. It's much less available for you. It's very helpful in some ways. Like you feel like you're being guided by spirit, like you have a lot of blessings, like an angel is watching out for you. You're lucky in some ways. But because of all these factors kind of built on top of each other, I would say that her Jupiter is really not doing that well. The fact that it's has those three elements. On top of this, it is opposite her sun, Mercury, and Venus. So this is going to, again, make her prone to those highs and lows. So her Jupiter is a part of her essence. It's a part of her benevolence. It's a part of her good-naturedness, being opposite the sun, being in the 12th house. She has a lot of love to give people. She has a lot of wisdom to provide the world. However, there can be some naiveness as well, because Jupiter may be, again, prone to excesses. It's in the 12th house of the subconscious. There's something about her wisdom that's there, but may be at times out of balance or unavailable, less available to her because of these oppositions. So she may want to see the good in people. You know, she may look at the silver lining a little bit too much, look past things a little bit too much. And so we can see here that she can still get amazing blessings, still reach the highs of the highs, but it may, again, go down to the lows as well. And her Jupiter rules the 2nd and 11th house. So we can see that some of the best areas for support from Jupiter are going to be in the areas of friendships and finances. So those are the areas of her life where she's probably going to be doing well, but maybe even also subject to the highs and lows. Okay, Ariana Grande. She also comes from a wealthy family, and she has a powerhouse mom who I think owns her own business or is super high up in a business, who's quite successful on her own. And her mom always supported her dreams and encouraged her to reach for the stars. I think her mom really set an example for her of a woman in power, a woman on top, which you can see in her music video with her, Ariana as like the president. So you can see it's really, she's modeling success for her. She's making her think that this is possible for me. And we can see that with Jupiter on the moon. Jupiter is our belief in ourself and our optimism and our wisdom. And the moon is the mother. So especially because the moon is in the 10th house, which is also related to the mother. So we can see here she has a lot of support and encouragement from the mother to really reach for the stars. And on top of this, her Jupiter in the 10th house of career and next to the moon, which is also representative of the public and public opinion, and so is the 10th house. So moon represents public, 10th house represents public, and then Jupiter and the moon here together, indicating she's well received and well loved by the public. So she's getting a lot here, a lot of blessings, a lot of benefits from being able to take off to become famous and to get a lot of recognition and support from those around her and the public. However, her Jupiter is squaring her sun in the 5th house or 7th house. So her relationship identity, her way of kind of putting her partners first or searching for certain types of partners can ultimately be sort of at odds or create tension in regards to her super famousness. And we know that her relationships have been definitely in the spotlight, have definitely been criticized. And so these areas of her life are, while they help build each other up, are also probably a source of discomfort as well. Jupiter is the ruler of her 3rd and 12th houses, which has a lot to do with creativity, spirituality, foreign lands, time alone, self-reflection. All of those things are really, really benefiting her because of this strong Jupiter. And even though that square to the sun is going to tinge it a little bit with a little bit of pain or a little bit of discomfort, a little bit of excess and the highs and lows, as I mentioned. Her Venus is also very strong. It's in the sign of Taurus. It's in a sign it likes to be in. It's in the 5th house, the house of her joy. So we can see it's in a good sign. It's in a good house. It's also the ruler of her career and the 5th house. So we can see that her Venus is doing well. It's supporting her career. It's making more money and more success possible for her. On top of that, it's making an exact trine to Uranus and Neptune on her ascendant, which are planets that are associated with what makes her stand out, what makes her unique, what makes her have her creative vision, the kind of like fantasy or stardom kind of twinkly eyes that people have towards her. This is all very much supported by this aspect here. With Neptune, people tend to project what they want to see on you. So she creates this kind of illusion for the public, and it supports her creative success and her creative music as well. The challenging thing, though, is that it's her Venus is squaring Chiron in the 8th house and opposing Pluto in the 11th house. So this is where we can see maybe her, maybe her Venus, she's going to attract with that square to Chiron some painful relationships, some people that bring out also this feeling of loss of control with Venus opposite Pluto. So this could be, from her dating Mac Miller, she didn't have any control over whether he was going to be spiraling into addiction or not. And there's this kind of conundrum of that causing her pain and her being stuck in this cycle. And that helping influence her music, helping her succeed more, but also ultimately leading her to feel a great deal of discomfort and pain. And this could also maybe even relate to her being creatively controlled at times. And this could have been more so initially, or it might not be necessarily for her, but it's very likely that she could have had some kind of creative control as well of people telling her how to be, telling her how to act, and how to look a certain way. And that could have maybe triggered some insecurities within her with that Chiron in the 8th house. Okay, so I think that this is the last one. So Hailey Bieber, Justin Bieber's wife. Also, her old name was Hailey Baldwin. So she comes from a famous family. Her, I think, uncle is the most famous one, Alec Baldwin. But then her dad was also like trying to be famous and is like kind of famous. So she's grew up sort of in the spotlight a little bit. But of course, as she's gotten older, it's become even more so. And she's grown up to become really defined by her relationship, which I thought was super interesting because if you look at her descendant, it's in Gemini. The ruler of Gemini is Mercury, which is right on her ascendant, which is how people see her, how she sees herself, her personality, her decision making. So all of this is really kind of tethered to her relationship planet. So it's like, I'm defined by being Justin Bieber's wife. And that's why I kind of put it in parentheses as well, is because she's going to always be defined by that in some respect. So we can also see that her Venus has a lot going on. And I think it makes sense given the fact that she grew up in a rich family, but there was a lot of volatility in their finances, which is not really something I hear people talking about. They had to file for bankruptcy when she was 13. And I think she also had many, many years of intense bullying online from people claiming that she stole Justin Bieber from Selena Gomez. So this whole kind of concept of her, her relationship and her femininity all being a farce or whatever it is, and being just really, really criticized. So we can see that some of this pain coming in around bullying and this volatility in her financial experience, we can see this really coming in with her Venus. So her Venus is in Libra, very strong sign. It's in the 11th house, strong placement. However, it's conjunct Chiron, which is, again, this insecurity, this pain, this wounding, and a lot of celebrities have this. So this could be part of the online bullying. This could be insecurity over maybe volatility in her finances growing up with all these rich people around her and her family not having a lot of money, then not having a lot of money. And then at the same time, her Venus is opposite her moon. So it can give her a lot of popularity, but it can also take popularity away. It can also make this huge conflict between what are my needs with moon and what are, how do I please everyone? How do I get everyone to like me? So there's this huge kind of feeling growing up of like, maybe not really getting the love and the support and the affection that you needed from your parents in some way, especially from the mother. And then as a result of this kind of plays out in adulthood as having to choose between myself and others. And so you can really see this at play where she has a people-pleasing tendency with Venus and Libra. But then with Chiron there, it's like she can't please people to the point of actually it paying off or people actually like, loving her. It's like there's still pain there. There's still wounding that she has to work through. There's still criticism. There's still insecurity. And it doesn't really matter what she says or what she does. And so she has to learn the lesson of being true to herself. And, the right people will like you and the wrong people won't. Her Venus is also making a square to Uranus and Neptune, which is showing this instability in finances. So that's the bankruptcy being filed at 13. That's going to make a lasting impact on her. And this could very well indicate some volatility in her relationship with Justin later on, if it's triggered by an aspect or a transit. And then it could also indicate also some insecurities in your feminine nature as well. Like, who am I? What is my identity as a woman with that square with Neptune? You know, what's my style? How do I define myself? How do I differentiate myself from Selena, since I'm always compared to her and I'm always bullied about not being as good as her, or whatever that is. So it can bring about insecurities and confusion around this sense of self. Venus is also the ruler of her 11th and 6th houses, so she could experience some of this volatility and uncertainty around health and friendships. Like, where do I belong? What's my sense of community? That might come in for her at a certain time of her life. And health, I know that she had some kind of stroke or something, and she's really young. I think she's not even 25, or she might be 25. And she had some kind of stroke, and so they weren't really sure what was going on. There was something, I think she had to have some kind of brain surgery or something like this happened that was quite serious for someone her age. And I think that you can see that because Venus is the ruler of her 6th house and is squaring your in Neptune. So it's that sudden thing that came out of nowhere. And it's also uncertain about, with that Neptune square, uncertain about kind of what even caused it, or what was the result of that. And they did eventually find it out, because, you know, Venus is in Libra, Venus is in the 11th house, so it's likely to not have the worst possible outcome. So they found it out, they were able to cure it. But again, Venus Chiron as well is indicating that there is healing that had to be done around that. And then lastly, with her Jupiter, it's in fall in the sign of Capricorn. However, it's in the 2nd house, so it is going to add significantly to her wealth. So I can definitely see her always being a wealthy person. Jupiter is also trining Mars in the 10th. So even though she has that Venus square Uranus, which could indicate kind of volatility in her wealth, because Jupiter's in the 2nd, it's like she's always going to come out on top. She's always going to be okay. Even if there's ups and downs, like, she's going to be all right. That trine to Mars can indicate some challenges in her wealth. For example, she's obviously really wealthy, married to Justin, but Mars in the 10th house can indicate public attacks, like I already mentioned with Khloe Kardashian. So really feeling like she has to prove herself or kind of deal with aggressive people to get that benefit. And she may be quite perfectionistic with herself, feeling like, I have to be the best to really show my worth. However, Mars trining Jupiter and Mars being in the 10th house is actually really, really great for business and entrepreneurship. So I knew already that she was going to do something with entrepreneurship. And then she just started her own kind of skincare line. And so I definitely think, while she may have certain challenges from the public and may have certain issues around relationships, she ultimately, I do think, will have a lot of success in regards to her career and her financial situation, because I think she was actually quite cut out for entrepreneurship, looking at her chart. So we can see that she's very much supported in this area of her life, and you can see where you're supported in your life by checking out wherever your Venus and Jupiter is and looking at all the factors that we considered today. If you enjoyed this, please give me a thumbs up and comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. If you want an astrology reading, check me out at willsboom.com. I have tons of readings, like life purpose readings. I have future forecasts for the entire year, relationship readings, business readings, past life readings, and so much more. And if you want to learn astrology with me, definitely check that out at willsboom.com. I have a beginner astrology course called Astrology 101. And I think over time, I'm going to be adding a intermediate course for those who are interested. So I hope to see you guys there. And if you want to, I have a really fun quiz where you can find out what planet has the most impact on your personality. And it kind of goes into a lot of information about what that looks like for you. So definitely check that quiz out on my website, and hope you have a great day. Bye.